Hey everyone, in today's video, I want to show you how to create simple dynamic schedules in Celery Beat using Celery Redbeat. So Celery Redbeat is a tool that you can use to create like dynamic schedules instead of using the default stuff in Celery Beat where like the schedules are static, right? So you would define the schedules ahead of time in Celery Beat and then it will just run according to that schedule. With Celery Redbeat, you can create dynamic schedules and then the schedules will run like based off whatever your users decide or whatever you decide in your app. So I'll show you a simple example of that in this video. And if you do want to do more with Celery Redbeat or Celery Beat or just Celery in general or Flask, I do have something called a coaching program. So I help people one-on-one. So if you're interested in that, just go to prettyprinted.com/coaching, or you can go to the link in the description below to learn more about that. So with all that said, let's get into the example that I want to show you here in this video. Okay, to get started, let me show you what I have. This is a modified example of a Celery example that I made some time ago. So I'll put a link in the description below to that video. But first I have Redis and Redis Commander set up. So Redis is going to hold the queue for the tasks that Celery will eventually run. And Redis Commander is just a tool so you can look inside of your Redis instance and see what's in there. Run.py just runs the app. And then here in the dunder init, I am creating a SQLite database here. I have a secret key. I have my Celery config here. So the broker is the Redis on my local host, which comes from Docker Compose. And then here I have a single task defined. My task, it will just print numbers 1 through 9, and it will add some text to the database. And then here I have the make Celery. So like I said, this is in my Celery video and I'll link that in the description below so you can see how I set up Celery. But since I'm using Celery Beat in this video and Redbeat scheduler, I want to focus on that instead of the basics of Celery here. So the first thing I'll do is I will start up my Docker Compose. And this will just create the Redis instance and Redis Commander. So we see it started there. And now what I want to do is I want to create the database in my app. So I need to install some things. I'm going to install Flask, Celery, Redis, and Flask SQL Alchemy. SQL Alchemy like that. So I need those for my project here. So I'll just wait for everything to install. And I'm going to export my Flask app to be run. So when I do Flask run, it runs that. And I'll also turn on debug mode. So export Flask debug equals 1. And what I'll do is I'll create the database quickly. So I'll go to Flask shell and then db create all. And that should have created my database file here. So yeah, my database is created. So now I can get into the example. So if I go over here to task, the idea is I want to be able to run a task on a schedule. And there are two ways I can do this. So I can do it in a way where I set up the schedule beforehand. So I create the schedule as the developer of this project and it will run this task on a particular schedule. That's pretty easy to do. But what I want to demonstrate in this video is a dynamic schedule. So basically the user gets to decide what schedule a particular task will run on. So if you have an app where users can schedule things, then you need to have it to where the user can specify the schedule. So to do that, I'm going to use something called Redbeat Scheduler. So to install it, I need to do pip install Celery Redbeat. So I'll just install that. And then I'll use it in views.py. Okay, so now with that installed, the idea here is I want to modify this route to have a dynamic schedule. And to do that, I'm going to use Redbeat Scheduler. So from Redbeat here, I'm going to import a Redbeat Scheduler entry. So Redbeat Scheduler entry, just like this. And then I need to import some kind of schedule. So I'll say from redbeat.schedules, import rrule. So rrule follows the rules of scheduling with calendars, and you'll see in a moment how easy it is to use this. There are other ways to schedule, but I think rrules are the easiest ways to schedule with Celery Beat, as I will do in this example. So I want to import from datetime, so I have access to that. And I also need to import something from Celery. So from Celery, import current_app. And I'm going to rename this Celery app because I often use current app from Flask. So I don't want these to collide. So I'm going to rename current app from Celery as Celery app. And now with those imported, what I want to do is I want to modify this route to be dynamic. So the first thing I need to do is I'll comment this out and I need to create a schedule. So I'll create a variable here called schedule name and I'll call this my schedule. And then I need to create an entry in Redbeat scheduler entry. So I'll do entry equals Redbeat scheduler entry and it's going to take in the schedule name. So the schedule name that I just defined. And then I need to tell it the location of the task that I want to run. So I have a project called project, and then I have a file called tasks, and then the name of the function is my task. So here, this is what I need to reference. So this maps to this. You can see this when you run Celery. And to see this, I'll run Celery. So celery-a run.celery worker. And I'll turn on the log level to info so we can see it. So I started here and then we see the tasks here. So project.tasks.mytask. And that's exactly what I want here. So it's referencing this. So I'll turn off Celery for now. And I'll go back here. So now that I have this, I need to specify an interval. Right, so the interval is basically the schedule. So interval is going to be equal to our rule. And in here, I can specify a frequency. And the frequency I want to use is minutely. But here, this can be like hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, whatever you need it to be. But for this video, since it's short, I want to show a task running every minute. So I'm setting the frequency to be every single minute. And then I can also specify a start time. So DT start. And what I'll do is I'll just make that the time now. So datetime.utc now. And I'll pass that date time to DT start. And then I'll pass the interval as the next argument to Redbeat scheduler entry. And finally, I can pass some arguments. So the task takes just one argument. So here in task, we see it takes text. So for this text, I'll put like from the scheduler. And then also what I like to do is I like to pass some keyword arguments to this as well. So the keyword arguments, and let me break this on multiple lines so it's easier to see. So we're passing the schedule name, the name of the task, the interval that it's going to run, the arguments for the task itself. And then I also want to pass some keyword arguments. And this will be a dictionary. And I just want to pass the name of the schedule. And the reason why I want to do this is because oftentimes the schedule name is going to be unique. Like I can't just have my schedule here because every time someone creates this is going to basically create another schedule with the exact same name. And you'll never know like how the two schedules are different if they have the same name. So I'm going to pass the schedule name here when this eventually becomes unique. But for now, it's just the same thing. And then the last thing I need to provide is the Celery app. So remember, I renamed it to Celery app from current app, and then I can just pass that there. Okay, so once you set up that entry, you can just call entry.save, and this will add this to the database, right? So let me go ahead and change this to created the schedule. And in here, in the task, I'll also take in the schedule name, right? So I'm not going to use it for anything here, but like I said, it's a good idea to have access to this because the schedule names will be unique eventually. Okay, so now let me go ahead and start everything. So I'll start up another terminal and I'll turn on bash and turn on my virtual environment. So in this one, I want to start Celery with Celery Beat running. So Celery Beat is the tool that allows you to schedule in Celery. So run.celery, and then I need to do beat -s and then redbeat.redbeat scheduler here. So this just tells it what scheduler to use. So I've installed Redbeat and I want to use the Redbeat scheduler. Max interval is 30 seconds. I'm just using this as a way to refresh the data in the schedule. It just checks to see if there are any new schedules there. And then log level info. So let's start that. Okay. And then I just need to start one more with Celery by itself. So this will be celery-a run Celery. and then worker, and then log level is going to be info, and I need 2 dashes here. Okay, so 3 things are going to be running here. One will be regular celery, the second will be Celery Beat, and the last thing will be Flask. So Flask run here, and now I can go to localhost 5000, and it says created the schedule. So now I want to see what that looks like in Redis Commander. So here Redis Commander is on port 8081. So 8081. And we see here, this is what Redis Commander looks like. And then I have this my schedule here. This is the name that I created. And we see here the args from the scheduler. And then we have my schedule being passed and all this other information. This basically just captures the schedule. So now let me go to the Celery one. So Beat is there and Celery is here. So first I'm going to wait for Beat to send the task to Celery, and then I'm going to look at the Celery one to see the results of that task being run. So because I set the task to run once a minute, it should start any moment now. So I'll just wait for this to start. And we see the scheduler is sending my schedule. So now if I go to Celery, it starts running the task because the scheduler is the one that sent the task over to Celery, not anything that the user did directly like you would normally in Celery. And we see it succeeded in 10 seconds, so no problem. So like I said before, oftentimes you like to create a unique schedule name for stuff like this because you may have multiple schedules calling the same task on different intervals. So what you can do is you can import from UUID and then UUID4. And then just make the schedule name UUID4 like that. And then you just need to call stir on this. So it converts it to a string. And then inside of the task, you can use that for different purposes. So an easy one you can use it for is to delete the schedule like after it runs, after some condition. So what I'll do is I'll just delete the schedule right away. So to do this, I first need to get the scheduler entry. So in here, what I'll do is import from Redbeat, import Redbeat scheduler entry again. And then I also want to import that current app from Celery again. So as Celery app. And I'm putting a try here because when I do this, so entry equals Redbeat scheduler entry, and then from key, like if the key doesn't exist, then it will raise an exception. So I'm just putting this in a try except. So here the actual key is Redbeat, right? So it starts with Redbeat, and then it has the schedule name. So plus schedule name. And then you need to pass the app. So app equals Celery app. And then here, if I get a key error, I just want to say that the entry is none, right? And then if entry, I can go ahead and delete it. But of course, in your app, you'd probably have some more complicated logic for removing a schedule. But in this case, I'll just do it here. So it's going to run once and then it's going to delete it. So here we see that the scheduler is still sending the task every minute for my schedule because it's scheduled once a minute. Now what I'll do is make sure the Flask app restarted, and I'll just go to port 5000 again. It says it created the schedule, and then I'll refresh here in Redis Commander, and now we see we have this other schedule here that schedules once a minute. And just note that the name is FF24D1B8 and so on. So this is the name of the schedule. And like I said, this is unique when you use UUID4. And once this runs once, the schedule will be deleted. So let's see here. We see here that it gives you the name of the schedule. So sending due task my schedule. So I'm just waiting for it to say sending due task and then FF and then whatever it has there. So I'll just wait a moment for that to happen. And now we see that it sent the due task FF24 and so on. So here it's running both. It's running both the my schedule one and the new one that I just did. So that's why the two tasks are ending around the same time. And if I go back to Redis Commander and refresh, we see that the schedule has been removed because it has been deleted. So that's the basic stuff that I want to show you using Redbeat Scheduler and Celery Beat. There's so much more you can do though. You can keep track of the schedules in the database. You can keep track of like the task status, but I just wanted to show you the basics of scheduling in this video. So if you have any questions about anything that I've done in this video, feel free to leave a comment down below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please subscribe. So thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next time.